Hello and welcome back to Tech Spotlight. Guys, I'm very excited to bring another video on Switch 2 news. But today I'm going to be talking a little bit about what the Switch 2 could offer power-wise, what I hope to see the future of the Switch 2 and gaming, like handheld gaming moving forward, as well as some of my hopes for what we could see come out on the Switch. Fingers double crossed on some of these guys. So let's jump in and check out some of this great information. All right, so first and foremost, I want to give props to this website I found today, wccftech.com. They've got a great article on some of the Switch 2 information. Some things that I'd like to point out. It does say that the Switch 2 is rumored to have a T239 graphics card as well as an 8-core A78 CPU, which I've seen some people stating that some of the power that's supposed to be on the Switch 2, they would say it could compete with like the RTX 3000 series graphics cards, which is a massive improvement compared to previous years. So I will have a link to this website down below if you'd like to read this full article. I'm not going to read it word for word, but I was reading through this and I see in this section I've got up right now that at Gamescom 2023, the device was supposedly showcased to a private selection of people, and details arose that some of those people are saying that the Switch 2 is running various games at 4K 60 FPS natively, and that it also offers full support for ray tracing and NVIDIA DLSS technologies. And last thing, it just says that it was shown to run the Unreal Engine 5 Matrix Awakens demo with NVIDIA DLSS 3.1. So what could this mean for the future of Switch gaming? I think that we're going to see some pretty big titles come out on Switch that most wouldn't think a handheld console could run. And I know the handheld market has a lot of different options available right now. I do like Nintendo. I like how they do it. So they're just who I want to stick with. I know some people watching, you may prefer some of the other options, and that's completely fine. But when I saw that it says it was running the Matrix Awakens demo, my mind went to, okay, what exactly does the Matrix need to run? So I pulled up and it says that the Unreal Engine 5 demo for PC specs would recommend the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4080 with 16 gigs of dedicated VRAM, the Intel Core i9-10850K motherboard and CPU, as well as 16 gigs of DDR4 RAM, and an Asus Prime Plus SSD. So when I look at things like that, that makes me think, okay, what else could the Switch 2 run? So that's where I wanted to get into what games I would love to see come out on the Switch 2. Some of these are probably, long shots, but you never know. So the first game I would love to see come out on Switch, because I am a very big Diablo fan, I would love to see Diablo 4 be able to come out on the Switch 2. And so if we compare the Matrix specs, right, to Diablo 4's minimum specs, even if we go up to the medium specs, the leaks for the Switch 2 are somewhere right in between. So the minimum spec says that you would need an Intel Core i5 processor or an AMD FX 8350, at least 8 gigs of RAM, and then for graphics you would need a GTX 660 or AMD Radeon R9 or an Intel Arc A380. Obviously, we have, leaks of 256 to 512 gigs of internal storage. I'm sure it's going to be expandable. But then you go to the medium specs, and then you're looking at, an Intel Core i5 or AMD R3, 16 gigs of RAM, NVIDIA GTX 970 or AMD Radeon RX 470 or Intel Arc A380. Still 90 gigs of available space, and then it goes up from there if you want to go to high settings. So based on the specs, that we're seeing for the Matrix Awakens demo, Diablo 4 would require less specs than that, um, which gives me hope. It does give me some hope that we could see Diablo 4 on the Switch handheld system, which would be absolutely amazing. Between Diablo 3 and Diablo 2 Resurrected are two of my most played Switch games. I don't have a ton of hours, but between the both of them, I've got like 600 hours. So I would love to get Diablo 4 on handheld and be able to play it wherever I want, when I want. So based on this, the Switch 2 could run Diablo 4. So could we see an announcement sometime in the future? I don't know, but I'm going to keep my fingers crossed on that one. Now, the second game that I'd love to see come out on the Switch, just because I love the setting of these games. I'm a big fan of Bioshock, and Prey is, Bioshock-esque kind of gameplay. But the 2017 release of Prey, and if we look at the minimum system requirements, you got an Intel Core i5 or AMD FX 8320, 8 gigs of RAM. For GPU, you're looking at a GTX 660 with 2 gigs of video RAM, or an AMD Radeon 7850 with 2 gigs of RAM, 20 gigs of storage required. You go to recommended Intel Core i7 or AMD FX 8350, 16 gigs of RAM. GPU, you're looking at a GTX 970 with 4 gigs or an AMD R9 290 with 4 gigs of available RAM. So again, based on those specs, it could handle Prey. Now, in some of these games, like I haven't seen too much about the battery on the Switch 2, so I'm hoping that we see some on that, because some of my games that I play on my Switch now that are more power driven, like Borderlands 3 has a lot of rendering and things like that, I see a lower battery time on games like that than I do games like Diablo 3, Minecraft, even things like that. I see a much longer battery life, so I would like to see more information in terms of battery life to know, is playing handheld still going to be a good option with these more physically demanding games. But if we saw Prey come out on the Switch, with no other recent news has come out that some of the studios are supposedly shut down or changing hands and things like that. So this one may be a far shot, but this game would be a really I would love to revisit this game handheld on the Switch too. Now, next on the list, one of my all-time favorite franchises. I've spent countless hours playing this franchise from Gears of War 1, but I would love to see Gears of War 4 or 5 come out on the Switch, but 4, I just really like the story of 4, so that's why it's in my list. But could it run it? If you look at the CPU specs, AMD FX 6300 or Intel Core i5 3470 at 3 gigahertz. You see right below it 8 gigs of RAM and 2 gigs of video RAM. Radeon R7 260X or GeForce 750 Ti. 8 gigs of storage space required to install it. You go to recommended and you're looking at AMD FX 8350 or Intel Core i5 4690 at 3.5 gigahertz, still 8 gigs of RAM, and GPU 4 gigs of video RAM, and could be looking at a Radeon R9 290X or Radeon RX 480 or the GeForce 970 or GeForce GTX 1060. So again, based on the specs that we've seen on the Switch, the CPU could definitely handle it. RAM, we have leaks of anywhere from 12 to 16 gigs of DDR5 RAM, and then the GPU as well. With the T239, it looks like it could potentially handle this. So could we see more of these multiplayer games releasing on the Switch too, especially with the news that there's supposedly 2 built-in microphones on the Switch? That tells me that they're wanting to support voice chat, which would mean, gaming with your buddies, more online games. Like if we could get Gears of War or Diablo 4, where you could get parties together and go play together and not have to rely just on, Discord voice chats like most people do currently. So could we see it more natively on the Switch? Maybe the Switch 2 integrates Discord in a way. Who knows? But again, I would love to see Gears of War franchise on the Switch. And the only reason I hope that is because we have had news that Microsoft does plan to expand some of their franchises to other platforms. So that's what gives me some hope there. Next on the list, I've got Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. I am a Borderlands fan, and this is the only game in the franchise that I have not yet played, but it looks really good in my opinion. And so I decided to, again, look up the specs. So if we look over here on the left at the minimum specs, Windows 10, AMD FX 8350 or Intel Core i5 3570, 6 gigs of RAM, and for the graphics card, an AMD Radeon RX 470 or an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 960 with 4 gigs of RAM. And so minimum specs, if you look over on the right at recommended, AMD Ryzen 5 2600 or Intel Core i7 4770, 16 gigs of RAM. And then GPU, you're looking at an AMD Radeon RX 590 with 8 gigs of RAM or an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1060 with 6 gigs of RAM. So again, based on the specs, could we get to roam the Tiny Tina's Wonderlands and get that experience on the Switch? Again, with the voice chat, that would be awesome for getting groups together, playing with a 4-man party, exploring the Wonderlands, and doing everything Borderlands related that is typically a bunch of craziness. But I have not played this game yet. I've watched a lot of gameplay on it, and I would love to get to play it handheld on the Switch. So if we see some announcements in regards to that, I would be very, very, very excited. And then last on the least, I would love to see Alan Wake 2 on the Switch. Alan Wake currently is one of my all-time favorite games that I just pick up and play once in a while. Love the stories of these games, love the writing. I love the graphics and the lighting effects and everything. You can see the picture I've got up here. I just like the way that they have the lights come from the trees, and I love the way that they progress stories in these games. Just Remedy does an awesome job with the games that they put together here and how everything kind of intertwines. But anyways, to get into the meat and potatoes of it, if we look at the Alan Wake 2 minimum spec requirements, you would be looking at, sorry about that, with the GPU, GeForce RTX 2060 or the Radeon RX 6600, 6 gigs of video RAM. Again, the DLSS or FSR2 quality. Like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, they did confirm that the Switch is running DLSS and ray tracing. Then you go to the CPU, you're looking at Intel Core i5 7600K or an AMD equivalent, which would probably be the AMD, Ryzen 7 or higher. And then 16 gigs of RAM. Or you go to they have a whole bunch of different settings here. I don't think I'll look at 1440p, but let's look at the 1080p recommended requirements. So there you're looking at a GeForce RTX 3060 or Radeon RX 6600 XT, 8 gigs of video RAM, and CPU you're looking at a Ryzen 7 3700X or Intel equivalent, and 16 gigs of RAM. So when it comes to Alan Wake, it sounds like we may fall a little short on the RAM requirements. There are leaks that are saying 12 gigs of RAM, others say 16, so maybe it's somewhere in the middle. We just don't know 100% sure yet, but with everything else, we're pretty close on the possibility of being able to see maybe an Alan Wake 2 release on the Nintendo Switch, which would be really cool. And I would not be scared to get that on the Switch. I would be very excited, even if they have to sacrifice some of the graphics, which as a handheld player, I'm accustomed to, and that's absolutely fine. But I would love to see Alan Wake 2 come out on the Switch. So guys, that's all I got for today. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know down below, are there any other specs on the Switch 2 that you have seen that I maybe have not? Let me know down in the comment section, because I'm going to keep digging into the Switch 2 until we finally get an announcement, and then I'll be digging into it more. But I really cannot wait to get my hands on the Switch 2. Hopefully it's within the year. But that's all I got for today. Guys, let me know in the comment section what you think about the Switch 2. What games are you hoping come out on the Switch 2 as well. I'd love to hear those as well down in the comments. Again, I do read and comment or reply to every comment that I get. Thank you all for the support. Again, this was Tech Spotlight talking about the Switch 2 and my hopes for the future of it. So, guys, you have an absolutely amazing night. We'll talk again soon.